Hello guys, my name is Volkus. I am a variety streamer mainly focusing on DBD and especially on playing Wesker, the mastermind. I have around 1,000 hours total with Wesker pretty much, and I specialize in doing all of his techs and especially Hugtechs. A lot of the time people ask me on like TikTok comments and on Twitch to make a tutorial, so I thought for my first ever YouTube video as a certified Monsieur Wesker, what would be the best thing to do? And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to make a full in-depth Wesker Tech tutorial. I do have to apologize to you guys in advance. This was filmed live on stream, so there's a lot of pretty egregious jump cuts happening the entire time. I hope you'll forgive me, but I also hope you'll definitely enjoy the video and that you learn something. If you do, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and come follow me on Twitch for daily, almost, Wesker content and streams. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you at the end of the video. With Wesker, as you guys all know, you get two dashes. Your first dash, which is shorter, and your second one, which is longer. First thing I'm going to talk about is add-ons, right? So, as you see, I'm running Egg and Walkie. These are the advanced add-ons, right? You do not want to use Walkie unless you really know what you're doing at first, right? Do not use Walkie just because you see people use Walkie and you think, oh, I should probably use Walkie too. In the same boat, don't use Unicorn Medallion unless you're trying to try hard, unless you're sweating comp or, you know, you're trying to do something of that sort, right? I just recommend you guys use Egg and Gloves to begin with, alright? Gloves just gets down your cooldown by 15%, which is very nice. And Egg allows you to have more space between your first and second bound. So you see how I have all this time? This is what Egg does. But Egg actually has a second hidden effect that is never specified, but has been discovered by people playing the game. Egg, after you do your first dash, it gives you a bit of a floater period. It makes you go just a little bit further. You see how Wesker kind of accelerated towards the end of his dash a little bit? Kind of like a short hop after it. That's what Egg does, right? This is what Egg does for you. Whereas normally you'd stop here, like you saw there was a little bit extra on it. That is what Egg can do for you. And that's why we want to use Egg. Right, so the most basic of Wesker techs is the Urobend. The Urobend is literally just, you see how I'm moving my mouse? All I'm doing is just using my bound and moving my mouse to make Wesker look a certain way. Where Wesker looks is where the survivor is gonna go after you've hit them with your bound. So Urobending is important for zoning. It's very easy to do, you don't need to know anything. If you also have Q&E keybinds for turning, you can use your keybind instead. I don't really do this, but you can go like this. It kind of gives you the max turn rate using Q&E, so you can try that. I don't really think it's very convenient, but yeah, you can have that on. I usually have that on just to play Billy. After Urobending, we want to talk about the Rebound tech, right? So let's assume I have a survivor running this car and they want to get around and go on this side of the car. What I can do is this, right? It works better without Walkie because Walkie makes your first dash very slow, very short. So essentially what we're doing is we're hitting this back of the car and using the rebound momentum to go like this and be ready. So this tech is best performed on flat walls. So this is, I know this isn't particularly applicable, but I'm just gonna aim directly here and hold D. So all you do is you hold the direction you want to go as you're bounding towards the object. It's so simple. So if I want to go left, I hold A. If I want to go right, I hold B. If you're coming here and you're trying to get the survivor on the other side of the car, aha! You see what happened there? The slant of the object, even though I was holding A, moved me the other way, right? That's because the object is slanted. Of course, you can do other things with rebound, like you can try to go like this and get yourself some space over here. This will be used in future for the Zeyyn Tech. But we'll get to that in a second. Right? So, that is the rebound. So you see, one of these rocks will have a little point to it. Aha. You see this little point? W, right? You understand? All you need to do is find the point and don't be right up to the rock. So give yourself a little bit of space. And you don't have to go to the direction of the point, right? You could go here, but as you see, I didn't go there. I wanted to go this way, so I went that way. So as long as this point exists, it acts as a platform. Alright, so you just go like this, and you get all of this beautiful momentum to use and traverse the map as you want, right? You don't actually need to perform anything technical. You just need to find the right position and shoot at it. There's also a point here. Will this work? So I'm not actually allowed to bound. You see? That didn't work, obviously. But because I wasn't actually allowed to bound right up to it, it will just drop you down. Yeah, I don't know too many Sky Wesker spots, if I'm being honest with you, because I think it's kind of a lame tech, because there's no skill to it. You just have to know where to do it. And I personally think that's just kind of boring. So by all means, go out, experiment, and do that. So the Skinny Bert, what it essentially means is that Wesker's bound hitbox, how the game calculates where Wesker is going to go during a bound, is separate from his actual hitbox. This is what makes Hugtech possible. This is what makes a lot of techs possible. So it's kind of like a pillar of Wesker techs. It's the biggest, most important piece of theory you need to know, is that Wesker's forward hitbox, like bound box, is shorter than his actual hitbox. So if you imagine that Wesker's shoulders right here, you'd think, oh, Wesker will move forward and he will pretty much bump into this bush, so that will just make him stop. But in fact, what happens is I'm allowed to go right through. If you imagine it's sort of like an artist crow, you know how the artist, when she puts down her crows, there's a little thing that comes up, like a little lane in front of you. That's kind of what the bound hitbox looks like, but not in those dimensions. So if we have objects that are super close together, like this, you'll see something weird happen. Like that. You saw that little shimmy? That is how we can weaponize the Skinny Bert, right? That is what we can do. So if a survivor was there, I would just bloop, bloop, go snake right through and get them. So what this allows us to do is the next tech, which is what we call a slide. Now, with the slide, we start getting into a bit more understanding. Like that. You saw what happened there? So, even though I was aiming like through here, what happened is Wesker came here, and the game calculated that my path is clear, because remember, how the game calculates where Wesker is going to go is to his bound hitbox, which is smaller than his real hitbox. So the game is going to think that this path ahead of me is clear, then this object is going to bump me, and I'm going to be forced to slide around this. So I'm gonna try to line this up. This is on the game, right? So look at what I'm doing. I'm lining it up so there's an object here on my left and an object for me to slide on, right? So I want to bump on this left object and slide. So this is what happens. I line it and I slide across, right? This is what's going on there. You can do this with any object. So what you need to do is basically keep a solid object on one side of Wesker and somewhere for him to slide along. This is where I should mention that your FPS matters with Hugteching, because of how the game calculates Wesker's bound. The higher FPS you have, the easier your hug is going to be to execute, but the less distance it will travel. I'm not going to get into why that happens, because that's a whole other can of worms, but it just happens. So the higher FPS you have, up to 120, which is the game's max, your Hugtech will be easier, but it won't go as far. The lower FPS you have, your Hugtech is going to be harder, and it's going to go further. I personally play on 72 FPS. I recommend everybody learning to hug start at 90 FPS, so you can get a feel for the stricter timing of 90 FPS and actually having a decent hug. You could play your entire Wesker career with only 90 FPS, and that would be absolutely a-okay. When you want to get into the higher level techs and doing some really, really cool stuff with Wesker, you should probably switch to either 72, 76, or 80. This is what most of your favorite Wesker content creators use. So how do we actually Hugtech? So we find the edge of an object firstly. This car here in Haddonfield is pretty decent, because as you can see, the corner of the object is pretty close to its actual, like to where it actually is. You can feel it out. Whereas on this one, it's a bit further, right? So it's easier for you to learn this intuitively. The best place to go practice, I recommend, is shack walls, or any flat wall, because those hitboxes in Macmillan, because those hitboxes are usually very, very tight to the wall. So if you see I'm stepping forward, at some point my trigger bound prompt disappears. Right here, the trigger bound prompt disappears. So what you need to do in order to Hugtech is you need to press the trigger bound button as the prompt disappears, right? And then you will hug the object, just like that. Same here. You see the space in front of us is open, so the game will be able to calculate a hug. You see the fence hitbox, it's super, super tight, right? So we look down, we see where the trigger bound prompt will disappear. There, So we want to go just a bit before that and hug the actual thingy. And hug the actual fence. You can do this on this side of the fence too. That is how you will get baby's first Hugtech. Right, lock in gamers. Okay, so you know how I said before that with Wesker's bound box, it's smaller than his actual hitbox. This is how a Hugtech works. Basically, we're tricking the game into thinking that the space ahead is open, and then we hug the object. But because the game thinks that we're going to go straight, it allows us to continue along while the object is moving our hitbox. So kind of like how the hitbox was moved when we did the slide earlier, this is what the Hugtech is doing. You need to have empty space in front of you. So the game is going to calculate that this is the only space Wesker has available. So it's not going to let me hug. You see how my hug stopped so quickly? Despite it being my second walkie hug, which would get me like up to that bush, pretty much. That's because the game didn't understand, didn't think that I had empty space in front of me, so it would allow me to continue hugging. But with something like this, where I have nice and empty space in front of me here, it allows me to go way further. Remember, the space in front of you needs to be open, and the object cannot be too thick or circular, right? So this object, even though there's empty space, the edge of this hitbox, it's too circular. So you're never going to hug this. No matter what you do, this is an unhuggable object, because by the time you get to an actual edge, you're already facing something else. So no matter which angle you try to attack it from, you're never going to be able to get a Hugtech here. So find something flat. On the contrary, this here, this bike, you can hug this bike. This one is hard, but it can definitely be done like that. So after you get your first ever basic hug, and I don't mean like around any crazy objects, I mean a nice flat object like this, and you can just hug it with your first bound easily, like that. Then you can move on to using your second bound, which is harder to use because Wesker is moving slowly. So probably what's going to happen to you a lot of the time at first is this. You're going to shoot your hug too early and you're just going to go flying. So let's try doing just a second hug, ignore the first hug, right? So you just use your first bound up and try to get a second bound hug. So after you can do 1 and 2 separately, like I showed you, you can then go into what I mean, like the 1-2, right? The double hug. So you go on one side and then you go to the other. So you don't just have to go like this, right? You don't just have to go straight into the 1-2 like that. That's like a clean 1-2 where you go to the other edge, you immediately flick around, like you're ready and in position, and then you just get the other hug. The in-between version of that is what I like to call an inverted hug. So it's pretty much putting Urobending and Hugtech together, and that looks like this. We'll use the second bound for this one just because it's longer. You see how I started facing outward? So if a survivor was here and I hug them, they would go to where Wesker is facing. You can use this for zoning, you can use it because it looks cool. And all you need to do for that is while you're hugging, you just move your mouse one way or the other. So if you just go here, you're trying to look for your hug, and you move your mouse outwards. This is what I call an inverted hug. I don't know if everyone calls it this, but this is what I call it. Remember I told you earlier that you can look into more emptier space to ensure your Hugtech goes further? That has a hard limit on it. Wesker's momentum, if you do it properly, is going to be forward. So going along this side and a bit forward is not really a problem, right? So, as we said, you just hug and you end up around here. Let's say this space here was taken up and I wanted to look over there. This will still be possible because I'm not looking way too far out, but you will see, I think this will still be possible. But you see how it felt more draggy, more gritty, more like you felt slower and more sluggish? That's because your momentum is misaligned from the object you're hugging. If your momentum is too far to the side, Wesker gets pulled that way and the higher momentum will win. That's what happens in the Moonbound. You're looking too far to the side, like that. You see it drags, like Wesker's trying to go this way, but you have too much momentum going this way, so the game ends up pulling you back. Same thing will happen if you have another object to bump you. And this is why you need to pick your objects carefully. An even better object is here. So we have this bush. You see, it happened again because I bumped into the bench and it pushed me the other way. So your Hugtech, even though it's a strong tool, is not infallible. You can really easily, positionally, mess it up by doing certain things, and one of those things is hugging a thing that has another object touching it, so it just goes boom, boom. So up until here, this was the intermediate level section of Wesker TECHS. Now we're going to the attack. So a rebound is when you just use your key to go one way. Well, turns out you can use this to hug. And I actually want to throw in the Bluetooth hug here. Essentially, what I'm looking to do here for a Bluetooth is to bounce off of this. Doesn't have to be a bounce, does not have to be a rebound. You can give yourself momentum in any way if you want to Bluetooth, right? And I would like to go around this car. So I would go off of this, because that's the easiest way to get momentum here, is to just bounce off of this, click around here, because that's about where I would Hugtech it, and then go around the car like this. This is a rebound. How are you? You see what happened there? So ignore the fact that he slipped out, but it just happens, right? Sometimes it just slipped out. So I bounce off of this, and when it's time for me to hug this pallet, I click again. And that's kind of how a rebound works. But how a Bluetooth is different from that. So on that clip you saw, I actually touched the pallet while I was after my rebound. So let's assume this car isn't here, right? Let's assume there's a little flat rock here. So I bounded off of this, and then I was touching the pallet, and I rebounded off. For a Bluetooth, you don't touch the pallet. Like that. That's a Bluetooth. You see what I mean? You see the difference between that and the rebound? On the rebound, the pallet is close. On the Bluetooth, the object is far. It doesn't have to be a pallet. It can be any two objects. This one is just convenient. I clicked at the right time, at the Hugtech spot pretty much, and it pushed me one way. The Hugtech spot being, again, where your trigger bound would disappear, or just before it disappears, sorry, on this pallet, right? Right here. This will take a lot of practice. Do not feel bad if you don't get these quickly. Next up, the Now, this hug does not technically require egg add-on and walkie, but I recommend learning it with this combination. Firstly, you need to find the corner of the object and the edge you need to hug. Hold down M2 to charge your power and press and hold S at the exact same time. Like that. So, you just walk backwards until you're trigger bound, and then you just walk back for maybe like another third of a second while holding the S key, while not moving your mouse. Don't move your mouse. We want to be aiming at the exact same spot, right? Just like that. Boo. Hello guys, this is Editing Volkus here to tell you that I completely forgot to add a very key detail about the Insta-Hug while I was talking about it. Please make sure to hold the direction in which you want to slide towards. So if you want to slide right across an object, please hold the D key while you are bounding. Otherwise, you will not be able to latch on. I made this mistake a lot when I started, and I just wanted you guys to not have to go through that pain I did. So yes, even though I forgot to say it, please hold the button D or A respectively, depending on which side you want to hug on. Thank you, bye. You find the edge of the car or the object. You move just a little bit so that you're inside the side you want to hug. So if I, for example, were to hug this side, I would go just slightly to the left, but here I want to hug the right because I want to hug the right. There's more empty space here than there is here. Here I would just bump and my Insta-Hug would go to like here, and it'd be really pathetic, and that's not hitting anyone. But here I have nice open space. It's the same logic for a hug. So if you go to the object and you haven't gone far enough back, you will see that Wesker bumps into it and flies away a little bit. That's your cue of telling you that you didn't go far enough back. So this time I'm going to go intentionally too close. And you see that I just slid forward and I was completely out of position. And then you can try to salvage that, or it's just wasted, right? But if you go too far back, you will just completely miss the little hug spot at the corner that you set up for yourself and end up flying towards the space. Again, to put it all together, you come back, you measure the exact spacing, and you start flicking your mouse to the left. Like you start just smoothly moving your mouse. And when Wesker goes in, you click M1. There's two ways to do that. You can either spam the M1 button, which is kind of what I do most of the time, or you can try to time it manually. I just spam it because essentially the point of the Insta-Hug is that the moment you're going to be able to bound, you're going to hug. Do that over and over until you get that exact distancing in your head, and then you will be able to just Insta-Hug. Find it, measure it, click it. Sorry, turn it, click it, boom. Insta-Hug achieved. The next level of that is the cue epic punk rock music. Like, if you know your bound range so well, this is really hard. I pretty much have only ever hit like 1 or 2 of these. So the unmeasured Insta is basically, you know how we measure this distance? That, I don't need to measure it anymore. I just know it. And that is the next level. And to get an unmeasured Insta, it's not just about knowing the distance, it's also about knowing where to aim. And this is why I have this crosshair. No other reason, literally. The only reason I have this crosshair is because it's hard to tell the difference between here and here. Because this is literally all the difference you need, right? So unmeasured instants, and the reason they are so much more of a step up, and they actually change category from advanced to expert, is the fact that you need to know, 1, the objects and where their hitboxes are, so you need to know where to aim. 2, the perfect distancing of your first bound, so you can get an Insta. And 3, how to do all the previous checks pretty much, so you understand the theory, and you just like, you just pull it up and you can just do it. Very, very hard, very, very hard. Some people will call it a Zeyyn Tech because the guy who invented it is called Zeyyn. Great DVD player, great Wesker player. But it's essentially a variation of the Rebound Hug. But so you're essentially combining a rebound and a flick and a hug. This is what a Zeyyn Tech is. You need to have a rebound tech buttered, bread and butter, right? So there I was a bit too far, right? But it would essentially be rebound and hug around that object immediately. A lot of people make the mistake of going too far and bouncing and trying to turn around and bounce like this, which unfortunately leads you in not finding the angle, and then you kind of not finding the edge. So you're just kind of doing this, and it just kind of looks weird, right? So you just go. You can kind of use the Zeyyn momentum as well to try to Bluetooth the object and maybe not like tightly hug it, but it's just a little variation. So you just kind of went a bit too far and you ended up Bluetoothing it. It will be the exact same execution pretty much. So rebound, flick, hug. Let's try it. Like that. And now comes the bane of my existence. Undoubtedly, in my opinion, the hardest Wesker tech. The Insta Bluetooth combines flicking, the perfect Insta measurement, knowing that distance exactly, flicking, and Bluetoothing. So it is really the big boy of Wesker techs. So what you do is you walk up to a car or any object, you hug it tightly, right? So I'm just holding W here. You then, while facing it, move using one key at a time. If you need to be in such perfect alignment, guys, it's not even funny, right? The alignment really, really, really needs to be perfect here. So you go up to a certain direction away, measure an Insta by going back and charging your power, then you will shoot it forward, turn your mouse, flick it essentially, and use that to Bluetooth this car and go like this. I flicked way too hard. I ended up Bluetoothing this, which actually I just did an Insta Bluetooth, completely accidentally. Yes, if there's other objects, I guess you could technically flick to them too. It doesn't really matter how far away you are. Like, if my space was open like all the way until here, and this car wasn't here, this was just open, I could move back, measure it, come here, and then start my Bluetooth, but it'll probably end like here. So there, what did I do wrong? I didn't flick hard enough towards the end, and I ended up aiming here. So I really do need to aim pretty darn perfectly to actually get this. So, to summarize, flick too hard, didn't flick hard enough, went too far, didn't go far enough back, went too far back. I'm not gonna hit him again because poor Sophie's he's gonna try and move. He's already been through enough, no? W. I can show you guys the one I actually hit the other day and how I lined it up, right? So Ignore the volume here. So I'm here at the edge of shack, right? I find the edge and I move to the side. I then immediately start moving back. Trigger bound prompt appears. I know you can't see it because of the 6 labs that was on. I move a bit further back. I shoot. I'm looking around. I flick and I Bluetooth the object that is there, right? That is what an Insta Bluetooth is. I just wanted to tell you, right, that I know in this tutorial it looked like I got the Insta Bluetooth pretty much instantly. I want to emphasize that this is a really hard tech. On stream live, I probably spent close to 100 attempts actually trying to get one of those for you to show on this tutorial. It's really hard, and I wasn't that proficient at it at the time. Since then though, I've practiced a lot. I've gotten much better at the tech, and this is what that looks like. Needs to be a smaller one. Yes, there we go, we get it. Yes! I'm getting better at those, man. Like here. Like that. That's supposed to be the tech. And there's nothing to say that you can't Insta-Hug from like a different angle. You just have to flick like at the very end of it. And that is kind of the category of the insane Wesker stuff, where you see people like go like this, like wanna Insta-Hug there. They will go like from here, go like this, flick. Sorry, well, they might go from here, go like this, flick, and then get the Insta like so. I'm not good enough at flicking to do that. But I'm not good enough at anything to do that, apparently. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed every single bit of that, and I hope you learned something from this tutorial. If you do, please leave a like and subscribe. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to come over to the Twitch and ask me live or comment down below any questions you might have. I'll do my best to get to all of those. I hope you have a lovely day and you take care of each other. You drink plenty of water, and I will see you in the next one. Volku's out.